5 letters here, just for everybody out there in Packerland and yourself today. RELAX. Relax. We're gonna be okay. I have just a new and increased love of life, and I've made decisions and changes and habits that put me in a lot better headspace.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the very third episode of Packers After Dark. For those who don't know, my name is Tyler. I do all the memeing, all the tweeting, all the fun stuff, if you will, for Cheesehead TV. And this is a show where we unwind a little bit and kind of just break down the lives and the people in the world around the Packers. I'd like to shout out a good friend of mine. His name is Scott. Scott, you were in the Facebook comments last week. You were asking about where is the Packers news? Well, you get enough of that during the week. This is a show where we just kind of wind down, keep it chill, and talk about the lives and the people around the team. There's so much great content out there that talks about what's going on with the team, free agency, but sometimes we like to take a break. And I tend to find the people that are around the team a little bit more interesting. Not all the time, of course. I love the team and I love everything that everybody else does, but it's a little bit more fun. But today, more importantly, with me are two incredible women, two awesome people, two of my friends who happen to be a part of this awesome world of Cheesehead TV. We have Perri Goldstein and Maggie Loney. How are you two doing this evening?
Good. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be here. That intro was just the right vibe going into the show. Perfect.
There we go. Got to keep it chill. You know how it goes. Packers After Dark. The sun goes down. The moon comes up. Just got to keep it chill. Lo-fi vibes, you know, hipster bulbs behind me. That's the way we roll here. So
you've got Maggie, the plant to go with it also. So
the plant. Yes, of course.
Gotta have the plant.
Well, for those who don't know, Maggie and Perri, you guys have a podcast, don't you? Your podcast is called Packs What She Said. You cover everything from the team, anything that's going on with the team. She's plugging the merch already.
Yeah, obviously. That's my girl.
Right, exactly. Gotta plug the merch. Maggie, my friend Maggie, how are you doing? First of all, Maggie, obviously you are a Packers fan. But I think a lot of people want to know, how did you become a Packers fan? Obviously, I think the world knows, or most people know, you're from Wisconsin. Were you born and raised in Wisconsin? Did you grow up a Packers fan? Were you a Bears fan and spited your parents and switched to being a Packer? What happened there? Tell the world.
I feel like my story is really boring. Like Perri's is going to be the interesting one, but I was born in Wisconsin, in Kenosha. I still live in Kenosha. So I'm like split middle between Milwaukee and Chicago. So I am like the furthest city south before you get to Illinois. Growing up on the border, it's like 60-40 Packers Bears. So I've always grown up around a ton of Bears fans. Some of my family's Bears fans, but my dad was always just a huge Packer fan. So growing up, you know, you did all your familial activities during the week. And then on Sunday, you watched football. And then it got to the point where I think I had more fun watching football than my dad did. And I started teaching him different things about the Packers. And now he likes to brag to all his friends that like his daughter has a Packers podcast and writes about the Packers. And if you have any Packers questions, you should call her because he doesn't know anything about it.
Maggie, how did you get started in doing that extra stuff that your dad brags about, your writing and your Packers stuff? I mean, did someone just see you cheering for the team at a bar and was like, hey, come write for us?
Yeah, Perri knows the story. I actually was trying to win a free copy of Madden I think it was 2018, and from a website that no longer exists called the Lombardi Lounge. And my article was apparently so good that they asked me if I would come write for their site. And then I never got a copy of Madden, but I did get to write for that website long enough that Aaron Nagler.
Hold on. They did not give you a copy of Madden after all that.
No, my man. So if anyone wants to mail me a copy of Madden 2018,
it's no secret why the Lombardi Lounge is not around anymore. Because you know what? They should have gotten you a copy of Madden.
They didn't take care of their people.
They did not. And that's what happens. You don't take care of your people, whatever. But Aaron Nagler of Cheesehead TV sounds like he took care of you. What happened there?
And Jersey Al. It was actually really nice. They both reached out to me separately. And then apparently they had a meeting and said, hey, I want to bring this girl on the team. And then the other one said, oh shit, I also talked to her about coming onto the team. So that made me feel all warm and fuzzy. And then, I've been part of Cheesehead TV for like 2 years now.
That's awesome. That is
and her
awesome.
writing is amazing if you don't read it.
You should. Should go read it.
I have to write an article after we're done here. So
there you go. Perfect.
She does her best work with like a little beer in her. Just a little.
Perri, do you have a similar story? Did you grow up in Packerland? Were you from Packerland? I mean, how does someone from wherever you are become a Packers fan?
Yeah, it's a funny story. Well, I think it's funny. I don't know about everyone else can judge that. I know I'm born and raised in New York, grew up in the suburbs, live in the city now. So New Yorker my whole life, but my dad grew up out on Long Island, and my grandfather, I was telling Tyler before the show, he loves to gamble and he loves to sports bet. So he never really had a team, right? Like he just kind of chose whoever he was feeling on any given Sunday, and that was it. So my dad as a kid kind of got to choose the teams that he liked, and he went with the Mets, local team, obviously, and the Rangers. And then he was like 5 or 6 when the Ice Bowl happened. And that kind of did it, right? Like he just watched Bart Starr as a little kid. And fell in love, obviously, because that was like the superstar. And the funniest part is that actually the Jets were very good then. It was like in '69 when they won the Super Bowl. So he was actually choosing between the Packers and a then good Jets team. And he really chose right.
He chose wisely.
He really chose right. Even though he says the 70s and 80s when things were bad, he stuck it out. But yeah, he just became like a die-hard, like never thought about rooting for anybody else. And then when he had my sister and I, similar to Maggie, right? Like every Sunday, Thursday, Monday, like I just remember watching with my dad. That's what we did. And then when I went to college was really when I started really getting into the team, because I had to watch by myself, right? It wasn't just on. I had to like actively choose on Sundays to, watch and like have it up in the library with me. And we started texting about it all the time. And so it was really like a connection between him and I that kept us really close to talk about the Packers. And then I kind of surpassed him in my knowledge. But now we still text about it all the time. Like today he was texting me all right before the show about how he wants Richard Sherman. So we still talk about it and still keeps us close. But
so you probably would have been a Jets fan, you yourself, if that would have been
yikes.
That would have been ugly.
Yeah, major yikes.
Perri, how did you get into, obviously you were saying you really started getting into it, and everybody's journey with that is a little bit different, but I mean, how did you really get into doing stuff like on social media and online and things like that, breaking into the scene, whereas Maggie, she was sought out by Madden, the video game. How were you sought out?
I downloaded Twitter my senior year of college to just like stay more attuned to it, because I was abroad like all of my junior year, and I kind of missed that season, which was sad, and it made me really sad. So I was like, I want to be really plugged in when I get back home. Like I want to know.
What year was that?
I was away pretty much all of 2016, and then my senior year, I graduated in 2017.
Got it.
Everyone will know how old I am now. I'm not 16 or 42. But I downloaded Twitter because that's where all the news is, right? That's where everything happens first. And I had no plans to tweet. None. I was like, this is just for my knowledge. And obviously I couldn't help myself, and started tweeting, started retweeting. And then since I guess I live in New York, I obviously followed Nagler, followed Cheesehead, because that's where all the news was. Not all the news, but a lot of the news. And then Nagler and I started chatting, and he was like, oh my God, I love meeting other New York City Packers fans. And so we started talking. He was like, like, I really like what you have to say. Like, do you ever want to grab a beer? And I was like, okay. I'm like, I've been like following Nagler for forever. That's cool. And we ended up talking about football for like 3 hours. Like we went to this like really fun sports bar here, and like the Seahawks were on, and we started making fun of the Seahawks, and I was like, okay, we're gonna get along. And he was like, okay, you need to come like work with Cheesehead in some capacity, and I was like, done. But that was like December of 2019.
Yeah. Were you doing writing or anything like that, or were you just tweeting for them, or like what was your first gig with Cheesehead TV?
It was this podcast.
There you go. Yeah.
I thought that like I'd do an article every once in a while.
Yeah.
Like I was like, I'll like ease myself into this. And then he emails me and is like, hey, thanks. Like, I think I'm going to pair you with this girl, Maggie. And she's up in Wisconsin. She wants to start a podcast. I think you guys would really get along. Go. And I was like, what? Like, I've never done any of this before. And I had like major imposter syndrome that Maggie like kind of really helped me through. But I was just like, that's crazy.
Yeah, that is great. Actually, Maggie, did you Perri said that you were the one who wanted to start this podcast. Are you the culprit here? Are you the one that kind of dug this out?
See, I'm going to blame Aaron Nagler for this because he had asked me if I would ever be interested in like spearheading a show. And I was like, oh yeah, for sure. Like that'd be pretty cool. And then he said, there's this girl in New York and I want to like focus on female Packers fans and like Packers voices. I think that would be pretty cool. And Perri and I, we set up like a Skype meeting for like, I don't know, 5 minutes. And we ended up talking for like an hour and a half. And we were like, oh shit, this is going to be easy. We can do this.
I was so nervous too, because it's like, I don't know, it's like awkward. And then we started chatting and I was like, oh, this is not awkward at all. Like, this is great.
That's awesome. So you're at this point where you're like, okay, so I think this can work. And then you two started and you're like, all right, let's start this podcast. How did you come up with the name Pax What She Said? Obviously it's a play on, the show, The Office, or, like that type of thing. I mean, whose idea was that?
Maggie.
I don't remember how it happened.
It's Maggie.
It just happened.
It just happened. It's one of those things you can't, but it works, right? I know that a lot of people had, a lot of people were saying, I think I see comments actually a lot about Pax What She Said. And I think they were saying on the Cheesehead socials, they were saying, oh, it should be like some sort of variation of it. Like maybe Pax What Cheese Said or something like that,
We actually talked about that. Maggie has a column with Cheesehead. That's what Cheese said. Right.
Got it. That makes sense.
But we wanted to keep it, like completely female centric. So we felt like keeping the she would do that.
Sure. And I mean, that brings us to the next point of this. I mean, obviously you've talked about this before on the show. I mean, your goal is to really, promote women and promote women in sports and all that kind of stuff. I mean, talk to me a little bit about that. What's that been like? How's it been started? I mean, when you started the podcast, when it comes to Packer space, I mean, just from my perspective, there hasn't actually, I don't know of any other really female podcasts out there about Packers. Of course, there's incredible. Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry. There's some incredible women in this space with journalism and things like that. But, I don't think there's any other female Packers podcasts that I'm aware of. If there is, please let me know. But I mean, how did you dive into that? And what was the goal behind that? Either of you?
Go ahead, Perri.
Are you sure? Well, it was like the first thing that we connected on, to be honest. Like we started emailing before we hopped on Skype, and we talked a lot in those first emails about how much it meant to have female voices in the space, and how much that was something that we both were like very passionate about. So it was kind of easy. It was like both of our ideas without it being knowing that each of us were thinking about it like that.
Yeah. And I remember like when it first started, I think like Perri talks about imposter syndrome, and there's a little bit of added pressure you feel when you're a female in sports, because you get a lot of the same comments, like what position did you play? Were you Division I? There's like a lot of those same mentalities. And then I think when people actually hear us talk, or we hope that we can bring another side to it and actually showcase a lot of the knowledge that we have. And I remember probably like a month after we first started, Aaron Nagler said, hey, somebody from Cheesehead TV, they emailed us and they want your email. Can we give out your email? And Perri and I were like, oh shit, like, what is the email going to say? Is it going to be nice? And it was this middle-aged man who said that he's followed the Packers for his entire life. And he just thought that it was really cool to finally see two women covering his favorite team, and it was like something he couldn't wait to show his kids and grandkids. And Perri and I were like, that's exactly why we do this. Like, I know it meant everything to us.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's like kind of why, I mean, it's our whole, like, not to call it a brand, but it's just like normalizing this idea that like women can also articulately and intelligently talk about any team. And I think we've seen a rise in it over the last couple of years, you know, with like Mina Kimes getting the NFL Live gig and things like that, where it's just burgeoning. It's not the norm at all. And we work with some amazing men in the Packers blogosphere, if you will, that are so incredibly supportive. And like, I'm really grateful for Nagler and Banky, honestly, for like they were very intentional. Like they were like, we want more women to be involved with Cheesehead, and it's important to us to like expand the diversity of our site. And so I'm like really appreciative of them even having that thought, because unfortunately it's the men in the space that are going to need to open up those positions to women.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, and just normalizing it, right? It's not about, making this grandiose push and doing all this kind of thing. It's just normalizing it, right? Because my fiance, she told me this story about, how, she obviously loves the Packers, born and raised in Wisconsin and all this kind of stuff. But, she was talking with her friends at her job, and they were, talking about Packers or, football or whatever it may be, and some guy walked up to her and was like, wow, you really know what you're talking about. And it's like, how is that? Like, no one would ever walk up to me and say that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's not a thing. And that's just one, anecdotal, whatever. But I mean, it's just like, I feel like, and you two, please, I want you to take the floor on this, but I feel like there's this energy of like, women always have to prove themselves in this space, right? So I guess my question to you two would be like, do you feel like you're given adequate room, like in this space? Like, where can people improve to ensure that, you two are, and women in general are just feeling more welcome in sports and sports media? Because I don't know if there's, enough of that out there today.
I think that's like a super thoughtful question, honestly. And I always think about, and it's unintentional. It's just something that happens like subconsciously. Like I remember being with my parents at like a Christmas or Thanksgiving a couple of years ago, and one of my uncles was talking about football, and he kept leaning over me to ask my dad questions, like just not intentionally, but he was like trying to get my dad's opinion. And my dad like 4 or 5 times just went, I don't know, Maggie, what do you think? And after like 4 or 5 times of me giving my opinion, he was like, oh. And then he leaned back, and then the 3 of us had a conversation, like instead of just my uncle talking to my dad. And I think a lot of that stuff is just, not to say it's like a stereotype, but maybe there's just an assumption there that there's not as much interest. So I think that's part of what Perri and I like to do, is prove that there's plenty of interest, and we want to help to vocalize that.
Yeah, it's all really covert. I think like there are only like a handful of comments where you get like that blatant like sexist comment. You're like, okay, you're dumb, I can ignore that. It's, but it's more of those like more sly comments, like, doubting or questioning whether you actually know what you're talking about. And I think that after some time on this podcast, the confidence level that Maggie and I have has only grown, but there's still definitely moments where people say things, and my default is to question myself. And that's, I don't want to do that anymore. And I shouldn't have to, because men don't have to deal with that. People just take what they say and they say, okay. So I think just like that, if people like notice that, like don't question it. If you disagree, that's different than having that kind of tone of, well, you don't know what you're talking about. Right.
Yeah. And I think it's a little bit part of the problem. I think, just my personal opinion, is just that there's not a ton of women like in the actual sport. I'm not talking about, a woman taking on Zadarius Smith or something like that. I'm talking like coaches, like, like my fiance put it perfectly. Like, she's not looking to go out there and try and, truck somebody, right? She wants to make it clear that she, if she wanted to, could educate herself to the point where she can go toe to toe with a Bill Belichick or a Matt LaFleur in a coaching space or something like that, And I feel like there's this doubt of like, okay, can women really do this, that people, incorrectly have, and I just think that it's really inspirational that you two are able to, and not just you two in general, but so many other people, I'm trying to be, careful with my words here, because I want to make sure that it's known that, you two are doing something really great here, and you're really helping people who may not even listen to Packer stuff as much as we do, right? So like us three, like we're in the Packer sphere every single day, but people like my fiance, I keep bringing her up because she loves the Packers. She loves covering the, listening to the team, and things that are going on, with the team or whatever. But, she doesn't feel like she necessarily has a place that she can enter in. And it's, podcasts like you two's podcast that can really help her out. So I appreciate that at least. And I know she does too. So yeah,
nice.
it's fun.
If she ever wants to have a conversation, not with you, she can always hit us up.
Exactly. As I told her. Yeah. It's like, hey, you should join us tonight. You're right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just like, it's always when I think it's just like a really, really old fashioned stereotype that like men like sports and women are in the kitchen. Just like, how are we not past that already? Like, why isn't it normal that Maggie and I just really enjoy football?
And we can also throw it down in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Don't get it twisted. We can do both.
Okay.
We can do both.
I talk about sports. It's just a hobby, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like anything else. And I think when I first started the podcast, I was even nervous to like tell some of my friends. I just wasn't sure how people would like react. And I remember talking to myself, and this is kind of a weird thing to share. I remember talking to myself and being like, well, if you were, selling like makeup products on Instagram, would anybody think twice about this as like something you do on the side of your full-time job? Like, no. So what is the difference with this podcast? It's just another thing that you love. And so that's just like how I try to like, show it to the world, I guess, is like, this is just a thing in my life that I love. And I like to talk about it with this person that's now become like one of my best friends.
Right. That's great. I love it. Maggie, when you're writing, and you're doing these things with the Cheesehead TV and things like that, do you feel a difference between, like writing and doing the podcast? I mean, I guess what I'm trying to get at is that sometimes people react to the written word a little bit different than the spoken word. Do you feel there's a major difference? Like if you were to go out and say something on Pax What She Said, that was maybe, let's say, negative about the team, right? And I haven't seen too much negative from you really on much, but I'm saying, let's say you were to say something negative like on the podcast. Is there a different reaction to when you do it on the podcast versus when you do it, in writing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really interesting because I have always been, and my husband doesn't really believe this, and a lot of my friends don't necessarily think of me as like an introverted person. But I think a lot of that I've had to develop through things like this, where it kind of forces me out of my comfort zone, and doing a podcast to make me more extroverted. But I've always been like a writing first kind of person. I was an English major. I was a communication major in college. I teach journalism. So I've always just wanted to write, and it takes a while for me to formulate my thoughts. So like even when I was the maid of honor at my best friend's wedding, like I wrote my toast like 6 different times. And, I'd been working on it for like a year. So when Perri and I do the podcast, as much as, we can like pause it or cut out if we say 47 times, but, there's a lot more like, not that it feels permanent, because the written word to me feels more permanent, but it feels more like you have to be specific with the way that you say things. And Perri and I by nature aren't very pessimistic people, especially when it comes to something that we enjoy like football. I have a hard time being pessimistic about something that makes me happy, but I do think there's a difference. And I think that it sounds weird, but I plan my writing a lot more than I plan the podcast, because to me, it's like a conversation with one of my favorite people. So it's easy.
That's awesome. Yeah. I think that's that's kind of what I was asking. I mean, even in this setting, right? We're live right now, where a lot of people are listening to us and things like that. It's a little bit harder. I kind of feel the same way. Like it's easy for me to send out a tweet, right? Because I can delete it, format it, make the way it goes, you know what I mean? And do all that kind of stuff. But I'm sitting here and actually like in front of a camera, I'm trying to formulate my thoughts in a way that makes sense, because it might make sense to me, but it might not make sense to someone else. But I wanted to ask you about that because I feel like your writing style has actually become very similar to the way that you guys, because I was listening to an episode of Pax What She Said not that long ago, and I feel like it's become very similar to the way that you do the podcast. And it's actually really in depth, which is not surprising at all based off of your writing. But I think it's I guess what I'm trying to ask is, what is the way that you look at your Packers coverage, Maggie? Like, how do you feel like it's analytical? Do you feel like in depth? I feel like there's a lot of different brands of Packers coverage, and yours seems to be pretty unique.
I've always considered myself a very conversational writer. So that's one of the things that I wanted to know when I started with Cheesehead TV was like it's funny because I teach objective journalism to my students, and then a lot of the things I tell them to not do, I do every week. But it's just a different platform. You know, I'm not working for like the New York Times or CNN or
Right.
some type of media outlet. So during the season, I tend to be a lot more objective. And in the off season, you can find me writing things like comparing Packers players to Hamilton characters because there's no content and I need to come up with some things. But I think I do tend to, in most of my writing, put in I and some of my opinions when it's the off season.
Yeah.
I will
Perri,
say
have you-
though, I will say like Maggie is very in depth. Like even I know she works hard in the articles, but like even when we get on the show, like she always has the stats ready. She always has her lists or notes. Like this is like, don't sell yourself short. Because there is a lot of work that goes into that.
That's what I was getting at. Like I was listening to the episode the other day and I was like, this is incredible. Like I was like, I'm learning so much right now. You know what I mean? Like, and it wasn't surprising to me because I've read your stuff before, but I was like, oh, I didn't think about it that way. You know what I mean? Like it was really interesting. Perri, have you thought about writing? I know you were talking about before how you were like, oh, I thought maybe I'll do some articles or, you know, have you thought about writing before?
In all your free time, all of your free time.
All your free time.
Yeah. I have. I've actually talked about it with Nagler before, but I love to write, actually. Love. But just the idea of like the schedule, the deadline, and like never knowing if I'm going to be able, I don't commit to things unless I know I can give like 110% to it. And I just don't know if I could do that with a regular writing gig. And I won't commit to it until I know that I can. So, but I would love to write eventually.
I think you'd be good at it. Yeah. I mean, just listening to both of you on the podcast, I think you'd be great at it for sure. What's interesting, I think what's coming up next with PAX, what she said is you guys, I mean, we'll talk about this towards the end of the show, but I mean, I think there's an opportunity for you to go out and do, you know, expand the podcast a little bit more and do different things and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, in today's world with free agency and all the Packers and everything that's going on, like, how are you addressing these issues? First of all, I guess the first question is, how regular is the show? You guys are doing it once a week now, or once every? Is there a set schedule for it?
Once a week, yeah.
Once a week.
Yeah. So if it's, I mean, once a week and still during the off season, right? Too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So during the off season, with everything that's going on, I mean, how are you addressing like the different things that are going on with like free agency and stuff like that? I mean, it's got to be a little bit interesting with everything, especially what's going on with the Packers right now. I mean, is there? Yeah, like it's got to be a little bit interesting because there's not a ton going on with the team.
Yeah.
I mean, Perri, you were talking about how you didn't have a ton of free time. You know, like how's that been going and trying to catch up with everything and all that kind of stuff?
No, I mean that like this is what I do, and I shouldn't say that. I have a life. Like I see friends. Like, I'm not, like, no, but I mean this is what I do in my free time. I mean Maggie and I like have a very, I think like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mag, but like we have a kind of strong stance where we want to make sure that what we're putting out there every week is like unique in some way. And not just like parroting back what everyone's hearing already. And I think that when there's not a lot of news going on, that's very hard. But we do try to be like very intentional with, okay, this is the way that it's being spun at the moment. Like, is there another angle that we can take? Is there something else about the storyline that like we can talk about instead? Like this past week, we did a Q&A and like a bunch of people sent in awesome questions and we got to talk about free agency in a very like kind of open, free form, just her and I chatting about the questions way. But it just felt less like, here's what the Packers have done this so far. And so that's how we think about it, especially during the off season. But we also are doing, I don't know if people have noticed recently, but we're doing this thing where once a month during the off season, we'll have a guest on. So we've had Rachel Hopmeyer, great friend of the show. She works for NBC 26. We had Michelle Bruton on. We have a couple others coming up. So we also are going to add that in as just something to kind of change things up.
Yeah, that's basically the gist of what I was attempting to ask there before I lost my train of thought. But I mean, it was basically like, you know, how hard is it to do a show during the off season when there's not much going on? You know what I mean? It's got to be tough, especially with you know, like when it comes to like Packers content and things like. There's so much of it out there, right? And so everybody's kind of competing competing for that space, I guess is the right way to put it. But I'd like to know a little bit about you two, a little bit more just personally, I guess. So Maggie, you said obviously you grew up in Kenosha and things like that. How many times? Okay, so Maggie, you actually got married in Green Bay, is that correct?
I did.
At Lambeau Field. I kind of want to hear that story. I'm a little bit interested in that because every time, I think it's your Twitter profile, right? Your wedding photo is your header, is that right?
Yeah.
Or maybe on your Instagram or something like that. But I think a lot of people want to know. It's really, really interesting. How did all that go down? Because to me, that's awesome. I want to know a little bit more about that.
So this is really timely because my 2-year anniversary is tomorrow. But
happy anniversary!
Thanks. So everybody knows this already, but my husband's a Cleveland Browns fan, and we got engaged at Disney World, which is like its own separate side story. But when we right when I got home, I started looking at wedding venues, and I was just on the Packers website. Like, I read Insider Inbox, every article that the Packers.com writers publish, Wes and Mike, I read every single thing. And one of the side ads said, like, get married at Lambeau Field. And I was like, oh, don't mind if I do that. So I told Mark, I was like, I would like to do this, but I know that you're a Browns fan. Like, how do you feel about Lambeau? And he was he's a Browns fan that is very much a football fan, like a fan of the game and the sport. And he also is just a good husband. So he was like, yeah, let's do it. If it's not $80,000, which, contrary to what a lot of people on Twitter ask me, it is very affordable to get married at Lambeau Field. I highly recommend that if you are ever interested, people on Twitter or Facebook or YouTube, wherever you're watching, it's a lot of fun. And it was just a really unique experience. We did the whole thing. Our bridal party stayed at Lodge Kohler, which is great because we had Lambeau Field till midnight. And then afterwards, we could just walk across the street to our hotels, which was super convenient. We had our ceremony up on the loft under the scoreboard. So we got married basically on the roof of Lambeau Field. And my husband's favorite story is they asked us what we were going to do if it snowed. And I said, can we stay outside? Like, it's Lambeau Field. Like, are we? And they were like, no, we'll shovel. We just didn't know if you'd want to move it inside. And I was like, absolutely not. Like, it's the frozen tundra. We're going to be outside. But we had a nice 46-degree day, sunny day. And then we got to go party at the club level. And it's fun that we have this thing where I think we had more guests than we were expecting because we thought a lot of our family wouldn't show up, and they were like, wait, it's where? And then they all came. And we had a mini tailgate for our food, and it was a good time. It was a lot of fun. It was one of those things that I'll never forget, which I would never forget my wedding anyway, but it being at Lambeau and me being in a wedding dress touching Lambeau Field was something.
And your jackets. Don't forget about your dope jackets. I wasn't even there, by the way. I just know a lot about this.
That's the ultimate flex, in my opinion. That is the ultimate flex, right? I'm out here, Lambeau Field and Lodge Kohler, which, by the way, for those who don't know, that is a beautiful hotel. It's incredible out there. Perri, have you been to? You've been to Lambeau Field, right? Oh, see, I saw something on your Twitter recently about this. Okay, so you've been to training camp, right?
No, this training camp is going to be my first time.
This is going to be the very, very first time. It's it's the trip to Mecca, right? So you're going to be absolutely ecstatic about it, I think. I mean, it is just.
I already told Maggie that I think I might cry, and so she just needs to
I cried
while I cry because if you think about it, I've been a fan of this team my entire life, from memory,
all 16 years. Just kidding.
All 16 years. And we've never been, right? It's people always ask me this on Twitter, so I guess I'll answer this question as why. It's really hard to get to. It's not an easy trip, especially if my dad wanted to take both my sister and I, which is how he wouldn't go without us, right? So to take 3 kids or 2 kids and my dad to fly up there and do the whole shebang, it's not the easiest trip. So I'm really looking forward to it. This past year was supposed to be the first year. Obviously, the pandemic kind of put a wrench into those things. But we'll go out for training camp, and then my dad, my sister, and I will come up for our first game this fall. And
that's awesome. Are you guys going to go? Are you guys going to go into Green Bay? Fly in there? Are you going to fly into Milwaukee or drive up or something like that?
I don't know.
Who knows? Whatever works.
We gotta figure. I know you're the airplane guy, right? So you want to know these things. Probably Milwaukee.
It's interesting to me, okay?
Yeah.
No, but I mean, that plays into it. It's actually not that easy to get to. You're absolutely right. I mean, because Green Bay doesn't have that many flights, right? So you got to make a connection. And if something happens, you end up in Chicago, right? Or Milwaukee.
During the season too, think about like who is going to Green Bay from a Saturday to a Monday during the season. Like those tickets are insane.
Of course.
So it's the thing. But yeah, I mean, we're really, I mean, mostly honestly, I can't wait for my dad because my dad's never been there either.
That's going to be awesome.
Yeah. It's going to be, like you said, it's the Mecca for us.
Exactly. And so you both are planning on going up for training camp, right?
Absolutely.
That is going to be awesome. I think you're going to have a lot of fun when you get up there and things like that. I think, at least I think so. I hope so. Right. Training camp's interesting because when you're there, it's obviously you don't really have to like pay to like go see anything. But if you don't get a good seat right away, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to be watching from the fence like our friend Big B out there. But
yeah,
I think I'd like to know when it comes to PAX What She Said, as a podcast, as an entity. I mean, what's next for you two? I mean, you've been doing a lot of episodes, obviously weekly, like we talked about, right? Maggie, you've still been doing writing, things like that. But I mean, what is next for you two? Have you got anything exciting coming up? Anything like that? Is something exciting happening? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe something.
We've been teasing this announcement for like 2 months on the show, so we really just need to do it. Do you have like a sick drum beat, Tyler, that you can like a drum roll to just?
No.
All right, Perri, take it away.
Wait.
Okay. Yes, we're starting in 2 Tuesdays, so April 6th. Maggie and I will be doing a live show under the PAX What She Said moniker. So it's gonna be PAX What She Said Live. You'll be able to get us on all the streaming devices, right? All under Cheesehead. And it'll be, an hour of us kind of just chatting and taking your questions and taking your super chats and doing all the things that people do in the Cheesehead TV lives, but just getting to talk about the Packers for an hour or so once a month, starting once a month. So we'll see how often that happens. But yeah, we're really, really, really excited to be back live. We love the live. We love interacting with everybody because, Packers fans are so passionate and like always come with the energy and the questions. And we definitely love that.
Yeah. So to answer the questions in the comments, it is video. It'll be a live show. So we'll have the podcast still once a week. And then once a month, we'll do a whole fancy live show for everybody to tune in and watch.
Yes.
And if you don't do a live show at training camp, I personally will be upset because that is going to be incredible, either at training camp or together at some point, which reminds me, you two have obviously been in the same room together, right?
What?
That's crazy. For those who don't know, Maggie and Perri have actually never met in person, which to me is just, right? So you had your 5-minute Skype call that turned into an hour and a half. And now here you are, still besties, doing your show, doing all that kind of stuff, but you never actually seen each other in person. That's amazing.
The pandemic kind of thwarted that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, I think that we totally would have hung out. This was not by choice. But
Right.
yeah, well, I'm actually going to go visit Maggie Memorial Day weekend. So I get to hang with Maggie. Yeah, we can't wait. It's like just so long overdue.
We're going to go to Madison. We're going to show Perri all the great Wisconsin spots and
Everything.
Yeah,
Quick Trip.
Milwaukee.
We talked about Quick Trip before the show, right?
Culver's. You have to do some Culver's, Perri.
Yeah, all the breweries that Maggie always tells me about. Yeah.
Some tailgate food. Have you had a classic brat yet from, Johnsonville or wherever?
No,
You singers.
I have a Packers bar that pre-pandemic, again, I used to go to almost every single game. And they gave, they did cheese curds and all that, but buddies, but I just feel like it's not the same if it's outside of Wisconsin.
Because you were at the game, the overtime game with the Jets, right? Is that the game that you were at? That's a pretty.
I've been to 2 live.
In the Meadowlands, right? Yeah,
both at Meadowlands. So it was that game, and that was awesome. Devontae caught the game-winning touchdown like right in front of us. That was wild. I wish I had a video of it, but I was just freaking out and like not on my phone.
That sounds great. Maggie actually got married at Lambeau Field, so I don't know if you knew that, but
I did. I know the Meadowlands is not the same, okay? But my dad and I got to see a snowy Packers game, the Giants game 2019 when they won 31-13, and Tramon Williams got a an interception right in front of me.
That was great.
Can I tell a side story with Devontae Adams in overtime?
Yeah.
Please.
So in it was 2017, Mark and I bought tickets to go see the Packers play the Browns in Cleveland at First Energy, and our tickets were like astronomically expensive. And then Aaron Rodgers got hurt, and it was the Brett Hundley versus Deshaun Kaiser Bowl, and it was in December. And I've never been that cold in my life because it's right on Lake Erie and it's windy. And for like 3.5 hours, I was so miserable and I hated my life. And Mark was having like the best time. And I was in all the Browns fans. There weren't any Packers fans. That was the game. Devon House got hurt, and somebody behind me yelled, "Drag him off the field and shoot him." And I was like, I am not safe here. And I love Browns fans. Browns fans are dope, but this person was very drunk, and it was a whole thing. So then the Packers, came back, took it into overtime, and Devontae Adams, obviously, game-winning touchdown in overtime, and I was recording it, and you can hear in the very end of the audio somebody go, "Oh fuck, no!" And it was Mark. So
was that the spin move into the end zone? I remember that touchdown.
Yep, over Myles Garrett.
Classic.
Yeah,
that's
so
fun. That's a fun game. Even
the
though
the Packers tweeted on their socials like, if you were at the game, like send us your angle of your video. And I tweeted them that, and I literally got a DM from the Packers that said, "We want to use your video, but there's a swear. Can you trim it?" So I had to trim my video to cut out Mark swearing and then send it back to the Packers to use.
That
That's
poor social
amazing.
team. Like, this is great. Can't use it though yet.
So now we're gonna go. We have a bet going. I don't have the picture. It's somewhere down here. But every 4 years, we take a picture under the scoreboard. So it's great because it's like the one time I smiled that entire game. So cold. And now Mark is like really sad. So we'll see what happens at Lambeau now in 2021. But
exactly. You never know. Yeah, I haven't been up to Green Bay since what game did I go to? I went to the Washington football game in 2019. That was fun. But yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, we'll see. I think everybody needs to get up there. If you haven't been up there, obviously
I just want a tailgate. I'm like so ready for the tailgate. Get me in there.
Lot 1, right? That's where everybody goes, I think. Yeah. Lot 1.
Oh yeah, Lot 1 is the place.
Not Corey's house. Lot 1. Everybody go to Lot 1. That's great. Hey, well, first of all, just want to say thank you, and I'm so excited for you guys. First of all, that show is going to be amazing live. Can't wait. Peck's what she said. Everybody, be sure to check it out. And you said it was the second week in April, right? Or the first week in April?
2 weeks. Yeah, April 6th.
Got it. April 6th. So check it out. April 6th. Obviously, it'll be on all the Cheesehead TV channels. Can't wait for that. And thank you so much for hanging out tonight. You two. It was fun. We had a blast. I learned a lot about you too. It's great.
Thanks for having us. This was fun.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate you two for coming on, and thank you for all you do for everything. Just with the podcast, and obviously Maggie with your writing. It's always exciting. Last year you did Packers as Hamlet characters. What can the listeners and readers look forward to this year?
Season? Because of that, in my Hamilton comp, Corey Lindsley was the king, obviously, because of a lot of spitting. I imagine that the center spits a lot in my vision. And Anna Lindsley and Corey Lindsley's dad both reached out to me after that to say that they liked it. So Corey's dad started following me on Twitter right after I wrote that. And that
is hilarious.
Yeah, it's just a fun. So we're going to miss the Lindsleys a lot because they were the best. But I don't know if anybody has any good musicals, things you want, maybe like Schitt's Creek characters.
I like that.
There you go. Maybe. Now I know what I'm writing about for tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. Now
we help her brainstorm.
Right? Fake it till you make it. That's the goal for everybody. I love it. Thank you two for coming on the show. It's fun just to chill out and just not have to, there's so much craziness going on right now. Pax what she said doesn't get that much negativity that I know of. I haven't seen too much of it. Cheesehead TV sometimes, we get all the.
You wouldn't know anything about that running the socials.
I wouldn't know anything about that. But yeah, you guys, you got it rocking out. You got such a great fan base and crowd of awesome people that support you guys. And
Well, we appreciate you all for doing that.
Yeah.
We love that there's not a lot of negativity. That's lovely.
Yeah, stay
Carry
away,
on top.
Directed to me at Cheesehead TV on Twitter.
Yeah.
Directed to me. We appreciate it. But thank you, ladies. Appreciate you. We have a great night and a great rest of your week. Maybe the Packers will do something. I don't know, but that's for a different show. Packers After Dark. Check us out. Of course, you know where to find us. And obviously, check out Perri Goldstein and Maggie Loney. They have their personal socials. New show coming up, obviously, for Pax What She Said. And anything else you two would like to share?
Go Pack
Thanks
Go.
for having us on. Go Pack Go. Yeah.
Of course. Go Pack Go. Thank you. Good night, everybody. We'll see you for the next episode of Packers After Dark. We'll see you later.